Our objective in 4.2 is to be able to identify congruent figures and corresponding parts. Congruent figures are figures that have the same size and shape. All of the parts of one figure are congruent to the corresponding parts of the other figures. So what that means is, here are two congruent triangles. Now notice that the short side of the congruent triangle is on the left here, and the short side of the congruent triangle is on the right here. It doesn't have to be that it's on the same side, because these two triangles, they are the exact same size. This triangle is just a reflection of this triangle over a line that I could draw down through here. Now I'm not going to keep that line there because this isn't not about reflections, but just so you know, it doesn't have to be in the same orientation. When I say the corresponding parts, I mean like the short side is congruent to the short side, and the longest side is congruent to the longest side. These are the corresponding parts. This third side is congruent to this third side. And then the other corresponding parts are the angles of these two triangles, such as this smallest angle here is congruent to this smallest angle. Remember how we discussed that the smallest angle is across from the smallest side. They're across from each other. The smallest angle across from the smallest side. Here's our largest side, so where's the largest angle? Across the triangle, so it would be right here. Largest side across from the triangle, largest angle. And then the third angles are congruent to each other. So these two triangles now have been marked such that all of the parts, and when we say all of the parts, we mean the sides and the angles, all of those parts are congruent in each triangle. From this triangle, they're congruent in this triangle. If we have congruent figures, we can write a congruent statement. It tells us that the figures are congruent and which parts correspond to each other. For example, using this picture, I can say triangle MAT is congruent to triangle, and now I have to be careful that I match up the corresponding parts. So M, we decided, was the largest angle. We put 3 marks in that angle. Corresponding is the other triangle's largest angle with the 3 marks also, so F has to go first. A matches up with U because of the 2 marks that they both have, so U will go next, and then the last angle T to match up with the last angle N. So of course we know math is fun and we just proved it. I'm just kidding. But I'm not kidding about math being fun. Corresponding parts, like I talked about a little bit earlier, a pair of sides or angles that have the same relative position into congruent figures. So what do I mean about the same relative position? Well, like I said, it's not the side on the left and the side on the left relative to other parts around it. So for example, the medium size angle and the large angle connect M to A, and that side has to be congruent to the side that's also connecting the medium size angle and the large size angle. So the figures you have to understand could be reflected, flipped over like these are, or could be rotated like you'll see in some pictures earlier. So if I'm going to say what are the corresponding parts, I could start for this particular picture with the sides, and if I list all the sides that correspond, we can either use our congruent statement or our picture. Let's see how we can do it with both. For example, MA is a side. MA corresponds with FU. I can see that in both of the statements, how they're in the same positions, or I can see how it's marked in the picture. See how they both have that one hash mark to show us. So I can write a congruent statement that those sides are congruent. Similarly, I can say AT and UN are congruent. Just from this statement, I know that those correspond. AT, that side, is congruent to segment UN. But then there's a third side given by the first and the third letter, M and T. MT make this double slash side, so segment MT is congruent to, well, the double slash side in the picture goes with this one, F and N. And now we've listed all of the corresponding sides. I could also list all of the corresponding angles, the angles in the same relative position that are congruent. So similarly, I can look at the congruent statement. A matches up with U. From the congruent statement, they're both in the same positions, the A and the U. Or from the picture, the A and the U both have the double slash in it. So I can say angle A is congruent to angle U. Can you list the other ones? How about M and F? And the third ones, T and N. Notice in the picture, T and N both have the same congruent marks. So either we can use the picture because they have the same marks or the congruent statement. It depends on what's given to us. So I want you to think about the word corresponding. When we talk about corresponding parts, we've heard this word corresponding before. Where have you seen the word corresponding used recently? What did it mean then, and how does it compare to what it means now? Please pause the video, and in the margin of your notes, in the left-hand side, I want you to write about where you've seen corresponding parts. Make sure you jot that down. Here are some examples where we can explore the use of the corresponding parts in congruent figures. Use the pictures to write a congruent statement if possible. Then list all of the congruent corresponding parts. So let's see. In this picture, is everything, the sides and angles, congruent to everything over here? Well, I see a 1, 2, and a 3 slash side. Over here, I see a 1, a 2, and a 3 slash sides. So the sides are all congruent. Here I see a 1 and a 2 slash angle. Here I see a 1 and a 2 slash angle. But what about these angles? Well, they may not be marked, but remember, vertical angles are always congruent to each other. Make yourself a note that we have vertical angles here. Since we have vertical angles, I know they are congruent. Therefore, now I do have everything from this triangle marked congruent to everything in this triangle. So therefore, I can write a congruent statement. I will say triangle DEG. It doesn't really matter how we start, but we have to be careful how we finish. D is a 1 slash angle, so it matches up with the H. E is a 3 slash angle, so it matches up with the E. And G is a 2 slash angle, so it matches up with the F. And there's my congruent statement. Now I can list all of the corresponding parts. Let's start with the sides. All of the sides that correspond. I can use the congruent statement. DE goes with HE. DE congruent to HE. Can you list the rest of the sides? Did you get those correct? How about the angles? I'll pick one to begin. Angle D is in the same position as angle H. Angle D congruent to angle H. I could also use the picture and see that D and H are both 1 slash angles. You try the other ones. Were you correct? Let's look at number 2. I see that everything is marked and everything is marked here. However, these are all 1 slash sides, and these do not have the same markings. These are 2 slash sides. So therefore, is it possible to make a congruent statement? It's not, because I don't know that these sides are congruent to these sides. So I can't tell, if anything, if I have 2 congruent figures here. Let's see how else this is useful. Find the value of x and y. Figure ABCDE is congruent to figure FGHIJ. There's no triangle symbol here because these are not triangles. Anything more than 3 letters, we don't really need a symbol in front of the letters. Now, where is the X? I see the X plus 1 is labeled on the outside of this figure, and because it doesn't have a degrees, I will know that it's for this side right here, side FG. So FG, if I look at my congruent statement, I know corresponds to side AB. It's a little bit more tricky to use the picture to match it up because there are no marks in the picture. Also, this figure has been rotated or turned from this picture. So let's use the statement. FG is in the same position or corresponding position as AB. Well, A and B are here, so this is the side connecting, and it says 5. So I know that X plus 1 and 5 have to be the same length because those sides are congruent. Now I can solve this equation, and X equals 4. Let's try the same thing to find Y. Well, here's the Y. There's a degrees in it, so it's for this angle right here, angle F. In my statement, angle F corresponds with angle A because they are in the same positions. Where is angle A? Here it is, 92 degrees. So I can say 2y equals 92 since those angles are congruent. Dividing by 2, y equals 46.